My son-in-law lifted his glass at our grandson's dinner, called me Bossy, and the room laughed while a lime green wristband on my arm labeled me guest. I felt the sting, but 66 years teach you to breathe first and choose your moment. So I stood, asked for 60 seconds and 3 facts, and reached for the mic not to fight, but to put the night back where it belonged. What followed wasn't shouting. It was proof boundaries and a choice that would decide who our family really was. And that's where this story truly begins. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Houston heat crept up from the concrete as I stepped out of the rideshare and into the wash of brass notes leaking from the ballroom. The Bayou Oaks awning breathed cool air over the velvet rope, and someone inside tested a snare with 3 gentle taps. I pressed a thumb against the small pearl brooch at my collarbone, the one Harold gave me on our 20th, and told myself the same sentence I'd practiced all week tonight is about the baby. Not me, not history, not old hurts, just the child. The foyer smelled like smoked brisket and pecan glaze. A trolley of glasses chimed as a server turned a corner, and the Edison bulbs floated above us like low stars. I could see the stroller beyond the inner doors, a flutter of blue blanket and a tiny sock, and the sight steadied me. I adjusted the strap of my clutch, felt the rectangle of my phone, the folded tissue, the small photo of Lacey when she was 6, and gap-toothed and moved forward in line with the other arrivals. "Everyone wears a wristband, ma'am," the front door staffer said friendly as if we were at a summer festival. She snapped a lime green band around my wrist with a soft click. Guest. I rotated it to read the words straight, then glanced at the caddy of other colors. "Do family bands differ?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She checked her tablet. "Host asked all guests to wear this tonight." She smiled the way people do when they can't change a thing. I lifted my wrist, let the band slide under the cuff. I breathed in and looked up at the bulbs. My first reply wanted to build a staircase of sarcasm, but I swallowed it whole. "Thank you," I said instead. The word tasted like restraint. I turned the band so the word faced my palm. It didn't change the status, but it changed what I had to look at. A sax line rolled through the wall. Clapping answered from the far side. Somewhere someone laughed too loudly, then caught themselves the way people do when they want to prove they're having a good time. I stepped left to make room for a couple in navy. My clutch was still under my hand, and I took inventory the way nurses do before shift change. Phone charged. Tissue smooth. Photo of Lacey and the birthday cake she'd iced with crooked stars. I smoothed the skirt of my dress and repeated my rule. No scenes, no raised voices. Keep the night gentle for the baby. If something stung, I would breathe to 4 and let it pass. People remember how you behave around a crib. Across the foyer, Joran half-hugged guests at the photo wall he'd ordered chin-high jacket sharp. His smile was turned toward the camera and away from the hallway. Lacey brushed past me with a quick kiss to my cheek, a whisper of hairspray and sunscreen. "You look beautiful, Mom, save me later," she said, already reaching for Joran's sleeve as an agent waved them toward the sponsors. I squeezed her hand for a heartbeat and let go. On the mic stand near the lectern, a badge read, "Host," with a blank line. A floor captain with a map on a clipboard gestured me to a cocktail table near the entrance. "Until we open the ballroom, ma'am." I nodded and thanked her. The tablecloth was ironed crisp. The water beads on the glass slid in a clean line. 2 neighbors spotted me, surprised but kind, and we traded weather and grandbaby updates while the minutes unspooled. The rope to the main doors lifted an inch, then settled again. I could see the band through the gap, a trumpet bell catching the light like a coin. I traced the edge of my glass and rotated the wristband inward again. 4 count in, 4 count out. The baby's blanket flickered blue in my peripheral vision, and the simple fact of that tiny sock anchored me better than any speech I might have given. Pettiness would not be the scent the child remembered from tonight. A server slid a tray by my elbow and murmured, "Excuse me." Across the room, Joran caught my eye and gave a quick, charming nod, practiced as a handshake, then moved on before the nod could... The inner doors finally shuttered as the latches drew back. The band shifted into something celebratory. The rope fell away. The first wave began to drift inside, humming with expectation and perfume. I lifted my clutch, smoothed my dress one last time, and stepped forward with everyone else wristband, hidden spine, straight. The same sentence, steady in my mind. Tonight is about the baby. As we inched toward the threshold, the floor captain called sections by color, not names. Sponsors first, families, next, general guests after. An attendant passed with a tray of folded place cards, their tented tops fanned like white sails. I caught a glimpse of my daughter's looping script and felt that tug a mother's pride with a small bruise. I thought of Lacey at 10 in her school chorus, second row by the exit, so anxious grandparents could reach her. Back then I stood in the aisle and smiled until she found me. Now I stood near another exit and did the same thing I made myself easy to find. The band leader counted off. A horn climbed scale. A child fussed, then settled. Gentle, I told myself. Whatever tonight chose to call me, I would carry myself like someone my grandson could imitate. The chandeliers blinked alive, scattering coins across the parquet. A staffer hurried of us, straightening tent cards, aligning knives to the rim of each plate. I let the tide carry me. Breath-measured heart, steady eyes open for the crib. The ballroom breathed open, and the music softened to make space for footsteps. I moved with the crowd, letting the chandeliers guide me like a lit path. Centerpieces of magnolia and eucalyptus anchored each table, their clean scent cut through roasted rosemary drifting from the kitchen. I kept my focus steady. Find the stroller, find my card, keep the night gentle for the baby. When the stroller's blue blanket flickered near the head table, my shoulders loosened. I pressed the pearl brooch at my collarbone and walked the arc of tented cards with the unhurried calm of a church usher. Whatever I felt would live behind my ribs, not on my face. At the third row from the bandstand, a place setting waited with a lily-folded napkin. The script on the card was neat, respectful of straight lines. It did not say my name. Ann D. stared back my surname, initial someone else's first name. The chair was wedged against a swinging door that puffed warm air and steam across the service lane. Every few seconds the hinge sighed. A server sidled past with a tray and murmured thanks. I turned the card over as if the right name might be hiding, then set it back exactly where I found it. The band tested a 3-note figure. I rested my palm over the lime green wristband and rotated the word guest toward my skin. Is there another Marjorie on your chart? I asked an usher with a checkboard list. He scanned finger ticking down columns. That's the seat, ma'am. Polite. Final. Not unkind, just immovable. The door tapped my chair again as if reminding me who truly belonged in this lane. A woman in a floral jacket setting a gift bag on the table edge looked at my position and smiled brightly. Are you with catering? She asked, friendly and unaware. I'm family, I said, keeping the warmth. Congratulations, she added, embarrassed, as she slid the bag an inch from the swing path. Lemon on a paper cut, sharp, fast, gone. I aligned the fork with the knife, the plate with the charger. Small dignities and small motions. Across the room, Duran guided ushers toward the photo wall with 2 fingers lifted like a conductor. His eyes didn't search for me. Lacey slipped in, kissed my temple, and gathered my hands. I'll fix the seating, she whispered. 10 minutes. I have to introduce sponsors before they scatter. Duty not doubt tightened her smile. A coordinator tugged her away, and she flowed toward the lectern, hair catching the chandelier's coins of light. Pride rose in me and found its shelf. I refused to be a problem someone had to solve. I stood, drew the chair 2 inches out of the door's swing, and sat again without scraping the floor. Enough room for servers to keep tempo. Enough room for my shoulder to unclench. I noted our table number in its brass frame marked the nearest exits at 10 and 2 o'clock. The lectern's path, the slim QR placard parked by an easel. Tonight is about the baby, I reminded myself, breathing to 4. Keep the room intact. Let people remember how you behaved around a crib. A server set water at my place. Thank you, I said steady. My clutch rested on my lap. My thumb found the photo of Lacey at 6 with a gap-toothed grin. A neighbor from our block paused to adjust her sandal strap. "Take my seat a second," I offered, stepping clear so the door could swing free. The chair went empty. The card fluttered a white flag with the wrong name. I caught it and reset it, then stood until she settled. Tiny courtesies travel farther than speeches. Lacey reached the microphone. I lifted my glass in a small toast. Her voice came warm through the speakers, welcomes, thanks, and a nod to friends who helped bring the night together. I let pride sit where it belonged, quiet-rooted. The door pressed my chair again. I angled it 1 more inch and folded my napkin a small shoreline against any coming tide. Behind me, 2 girls taught an uncle a chorus he'd already forgotten. Someone at the next table debated dessert. The baby sighed that feather-soft sound that makes whole rows lift their heads without meaning to. Joy was here. I could live inside that fact even from the service lane. Across the floor, a monitor rolled in on a cart screen, bright with a queue of titles. The list faced the dance space. Names refreshed in a steady scroll sponsor reel. Father's words, toasts. I watched for the simple clip I recorded last week, at Lacey's request, a welcome in my voice for a child who will one day be old enough to hear it. Lines moved, the cursor blinked, my title didn't appear. The monitor on the AV riser glowed like a small moon. I drifted toward it, breathing through the 4 count I use when the room wants something from me I don't plan to give. File names scrolled in a tidy stack, sponsor bumper. Newborn slideshow, Dad's Toast Agency. Thanks, welcome from Casey. I looked for the one Lacey named when she filmed me in my kitchen, Grandma M. Nothing began with my initials. The list looped, and still nothing. I kept my smile where the room could see it and let my hands rest lightly on the rail so the moment could pass without taking more than it already had. "Excuse me," I said to the man with the headset. His badge read Dellen, a strip of gaffer tape beneath it scribbled with times. "Is there a tribute from a grandmother in your queue?" He checked the screen, then a thumb drive, then his phone moving with the brisk courtesy of someone who intends to be useful. "I've got a note," he said, turning the phone so I could read. The message thread was labeled "From Casey MC." It repeated the same line word for word twice if she asks, say, technical difficulties. The timestamps were stacked like train cars. The wording was too neat to be a surprise. "Thank you for checking," I told him. "Please don't change anything on my account." Relief softened his face. He nodded and returned to his marks, cables, tucked cues aligned. I stepped aside so a cart could pass and let the fact of the thing settle the file was absent. The alibi was ready. The timing was planned. Casey jogged by with a clipboard and a smile that could start a lawnmower. "Is there a run of show I could skim?" I asked, low enough to be helpful and not a problem. He handed me a crisp sheet. At the top, host Joran. Below it, vendors CC'd time boxes beats. My name did not appear, no family welcome, no grandmother's blessing. I read the order once, then handed the paper back. "Thank you," I said, because kindness is a tool as sharp as any. He went on, already counting down in his head. Lacey slid into the corner of my vision as if she had learned to find me by the quiet. "Mom," she whispered, guiding my shoulder a few inches out of the service lane they'll run the slideshow first. "I'll cue your part, give me 10. A coordinator's hand claimed her elbow. She was 2 clocks at once, the one for the room and the one set to me. I squeezed her fingers once. "Do what you need to do, honey." She nodded and disappeared into the current. I returned to my chair by the swinging door and smoothed the hem before I sat. 3 facts lined up like utensils, the tribute missing from the queue, the instruction to say technical difficulties, the schedule that forgot to include me. I rolled the lime green wristband so the word guest faced my palm, then cooled my jaw before it could betray what my heart would not. I would not pull a mic from anyone's hand. I would not let a baby's night be measured by my anger. There are other ways to speak in a room built for listening. Casey took the mic and warmed the crowd like a gas flame under a pot. He joked about parking about Houston, pretending to be fall. The room softened on cue. Joranne moved through the aisles with sleeves crisp and smile generous, catching cameras as if the night might spill without his hands to guide it. The newborn slideshow bloomed across the screens, tiny fingers a hospital cap, a yawn so wide the room involuntarily sighed. I let the sweetness wash over me without letting it carry me away. People applauded, and the sound landed perfectly on Joranne's practiced grin. The service door tapped my chair. I nudged an inch and aligned my fork again, small order, in a small square of space. A neighbor leaned across and whispered, "Isn't he just perfect meaning the baby?" "He is," I said and meant it, more than anything else in the room. On the side monitor, the cue rolled to sponsors. The word family did not appear on any line. Dellin glanced my way, apology living on his face with nowhere to go. I offered a brief nod that told him we were fine and that dignity can be as contagious as panic. I looked toward the stroller near the head table, blue blanket folded with the unstudied care of people new to this much love. My breath found its slow count again. I could carry a night like this on my back and still keep my hands open. The band softened behind Casey's voice. Glasses settled, chairs edged closer to tables. On the screens, a sponsor logo faded and left a simple frame of light. The room anticipated the next warm thing. Joranne lifted his glass at the center of it, smile bright as a marquee, and silence gathered, the easy, expectant kind that arrives before a joke everyone will decide is funny. My hands were steady on my napkin. My jaw was a quiet line. I felt the exact moment the word he had chosen for me landed in his mouth, round and neat, ready to be served. Before he spoke, a breeze from the vent lifted my place card and set it flapping, Ann D. waving at a woman with another name. I pressed it flat and let the sting move through me. At the next table, someone asked for extra lemon. A server slipped by with pecan tarts. In another life, I might have managed details like that. Tonight, my only job was witness, eyes open, breath, steady memory good. He cleared his throat. The hush leaned forward. Casey's patter curled to a finish like ribbon on a gift. Glasses chimed. Silver paused and the server lane went still, long enough for Joranne to step into a warm pool of light. His tux jacket sat just so the pocket square crisp as a folded flag. I straightened my knife and fork until their edges matched the pattern in the linen, then set my hands quiet. The mic stand's badge still read host with a blank line, as if the room itself had left space for honesty. I didn't move. I let the moment show me who felt comfortable on a stage, built with other people's hands. He opened the way charming men do, gratitude in a smile, a light touch on the room's shoulder. "What a beautiful evening," he said, voice pitched to reach the back table without sounding like it tried. "Thank you to everyone who made this possible." Heads nodded, phones lifted. He slid from thanks into tone. "Tonight," he said, "we let go. We let go of control. We let go of stress. We let go of the urge to micromanage every little thing. Tonight is about joy." A laugh rose polite at first, then fuller as people looked at one another to confirm they'd heard the cue. I breathed through my nose and counted to 4. Lacey's eyes flicked toward me. I lifted my chin a fraction, steady. He let the laughter settle, then lifted his glass. "To family," he said, to our sweet boy, and to the woman we all know and love, our adorably bossy matriarch. The word landed like a rubber stamp on a legal pad, neat final, meant to endure. Some guests laughed too quickly, eager to prove they could take a joke. Others looked down as if courtesy might shield them from being counted among the unkind. I sipped water, rotated the lime green band inward, so guest faced my palm and smoothed the crease in my napkin as if it were a thought I meant to file away, not swallow. As he traded the mic back to Casey, a folded half-sheet slipped from Joranne's inner pocket and skated to the stage lip. The front row stiffened. From where I sat, I could read 3 tidy bullets in a bold hand. "Let go of control, get laugh bossy" line. Casey's shoe nudged the paper aside with the practiced calm of a man who has done this before. The crowd didn't notice or chose not to. I did what I always do when something sharp gleams in plain sight. I marked the time, the words, and the witness, and slid the moment into the file in my head with the wristband, the seat by the swinging door, and the missing video. Around me, the room behaved like rooms do. A cousin repeated Bossy with a grin as if saying it softly could turn it into love. Two neighbors reheated the joke and chuckled in the careful way of people who like to be on the right side of a laugh. The service door tapped my chair again, and the place card, Ann D., fluttered like a small bird against glass. I pressed my palm over it and stilled the paper. Names and bracelets don't decide who family is. Behavior does. I scanned the tables. Great aunt's co-workers, the agency's sponsors, each one a little climate system taking its cue from the man with the mic. I set my fork parallel to my knife and squared my glass to the weave in the tablecloth until my breathing found a metronome 4 and 6 out. The tightness at my jaw loosened. Cold anger sat under glass exactly where I'd left it next, to resolve which felt less like fire than steel cooling to shape. I thought of Lacey's quick kiss at my temple and the way she'd said 10 minutes. I thought of the text Dellen had shown me and the blank space where a host's name should sit. These were not accidents. They were choices arranged to look like hospitality. Duran lifted his glass again, basking in applause that arrived on cue, the way trained things do. He glanced toward the sponsor's table with the brightness of a man who understands his job tonight as much as his joy. I raised my glass the necessary inch so my absence wouldn't become the story, then set it down without drinking. The server lane reopened. Trays slid by. Casey reclaimed the mic and teased that dinner would be served as soon as the hosts finished a few words. I pressed the wristband deeper into my wrist so it wouldn't catch the light and become its own conversation. A breath, then another, and the ache behind my breastbone thinned to something clean. When you've mothered grown people, you learn which messes need hands and which need time. This one needed 60 seconds and 3 facts laid out like a nurse setting instruments on a tray, sterile, precise, necessary. I didn't need a speech. I didn't need a scene. I needed clarity placed gently on a table that had been arranged for other things. The applause ebbed. Chairs whispered across carpet. Casey angled the mic to reset the stand. Duran looked pleased with himself in that soft, practiced way I've seen at corporate galas and school fundraisers. I pushed back my chair just enough to be heard without blocking the lane. My hands were steady. The breath in my ribs kept time. I stood. 60 seconds, I said. 3 facts. The applause hadn't fully drained from the chandeliers when I rose. The lane behind me froze. A server balanced a tray like a statue, and the swinging door held a breath mid-sway. Casey noticed me standing with my hands quiet at my sides and the blank host badge glowing on the lectern like a dare. I didn't clear my throat or ask for the room. I offered a practical smile and said 60 seconds, 3 facts. Casey hesitated just long enough to decide whether this would make trouble or remove it, then stepped forward and placed the microphone in my hand. I kept the mic low to avoid feedback, counted to 4, the way I taught Lacey to breathe through her contractions, and spoke without hurry. "I won't take your evening," I said. "I need 60 seconds to state 3 facts, no opinions." The sentence did the work on its own. Glasses lowered, conversations halted. The service lane behind me went still as if the staff knew a raised tray could shatter a moment that needed to hold. Across the tables, Lacey found my eyes and gave the tiniest nod. I answered with the slightest tilt of my chin and let my breath be the metronome. Fact 1, the reservation was made and paid under my name. I tapped the corner of the lectern screen with a knuckle. A prompt bloomed for a QR code, the same square I had noticed earlier when I clocked the placard and chose silence. Casey's hand twitched to help. I lifted my wrist, lime band turned inward, and instead reached into my clutch. The phone opened to the venue's confirmation link, the one the manager sent the afternoon I placed the deposit after a long call with my bank. I held the screen steady and tilted it toward the reader. The reader pulsed. Once, then washed the trim in a clean green check. The side monitor updated with a quiet blink, reservation holder Marjorie, last name. Beneath it, A field that had been empty all evening filled itself in host. Marjorie, last name. The change made a sound, though no speaker carried it an intake of breath, a ripple under linen and crystal, the shuffle people make when the map they were handed does not match the ground beneath their shoes. I didn't look for Joran. I looked at the screen the way you look at a clock when the hour finally lands. I set the microphone back in its cradle for a heartbeat and let silence carry half the message. "Thank you, Casey," I said, then lifted the mic again and kept my gaze on the room, not any one face. I'm here to welcome my grandson, not to manage anyone. That line mattered to me more than the confirmation. I have cooked, polished, and stitched a family long enough to know when management is love and when it's theater. Tonight needed less theater. My hands rested on the lectern so any tremor would meet wood. A few guests shifted, recalibrating what they had just laughed at. I didn't fix their discomfort. I continued in the same even tone. Fact 2 and Fact 3 concern where the money goes and what it never pays for. I did not open a folder or wave a paper. The clutch stayed shut the way you keep a gift wrapped until the right hour. Not tonight, I added, to spare the baby his welcome from turning into a courtroom. A handful of faces leaned forward. More looked down at their napkins like a quiz had arrived. I stepped back from the lectern to give the space back to the evening. The lane behind me exhaled. The swinging door resumed its soft tap and nudged my chair as if to remind me who it had been bumping all night. I steadied the place card with the wrong name and slid it an inch so the hinge would miss it. Casey reclaimed the mic, relief and curiosity wrestling politely on his face. I spared him from choosing. "That's all for now," I said, pitched, so only the front tables would hear. "We're here for a baby." The band lifted, a warm chord dinner service resumed, and the room learned its new balance quicker than I expected. People are quick studies when the lesson is simple. A neighbor who had asked if I was with catering now angled his chair to shield me from the door. A sponsor I'd never met nodded once, a sober little bow a man gives when he understands the value of a receipt. Lacey brushed my shoulder in passing a thank you. She didn't have time to speak. I rotated the wristband so guest hid against my skin and folded my hands in my lap. The green check stayed on the monitor, quiet as a nightlight. For a moment, I let myself look at the stroller near the stage, at the knit blanket with the tiny acorns I had finished the week before. I thought about the promise my late husband and I wrote on a scrap of paper and tucked into our desk years ago: spend freely on the child, never on the show. It wasn't legal language, it was common sense written in ink that never faded. People forget what paid the deposit. Children remember who kept the room gentle. I breathed in for 4, out for 6, and let the heat move out into my chest. The music swelled. The servers moved again. Conversation restarted in small, careful circles that gave our table a little more space than it had before. No one announced the shift, but we all felt it. It was like when a storm passes and the dogs stop pacing. I straightened my fork, set my glass at the top right of the plate, and let my shoulders ease. Pride could have flared. Instead, I chose the smaller, harder thing: patience. There would be time enough for the other 2 facts, and the room would be ready. I didn't step from the lectern yet. The green check still glowed. The room held its breath. I opened my clutch and lifted one sheet folded in thirds. These are 3 lines my late husband and I wrote for any child who'd join this family. I said steady. I read them once. Plain 1 funds are for the child's needs. 2, any withdrawal requires 2 adult signatures. 3, no adult vanity or branding expenses ever. I set the page down, palm flat, so my hand wouldn't telegraph feeling. Authority doesn't need volume, it needs edges. From the clutch, I slid a small cream card, black type, in 2 columns, and placed it beneath the mic where the first rows could see. "We call this child versus adult vanity," I said. Left column diapers, pediatric care education. Right column photo walls, wardrobe upgrades, promotion costs. If a charge makes a baby drier, safer, smarter, we consider it. If it makes an adult louder or shinier, we don't. Heads tilted the way people do when a rule sounds like something they knew but forgot to say out loud. I didn't hunt for nods. I let the ink work. I kept my phone low screen dimmed, no names, no vendors. 3 fraud alert pings hit my email this week. I said each its own click. Monday, then 12 p.m., the night a technical difficulty appeared. Wednesday 7:43 p.m., the night my seat moved to the service lane. Friday 10:06 a.m., the morning the photo wall was added. Dates and times only. Each ping requested access to funds restricted to the child. I did not explain our safeguards. Contained disgust is stronger than outrage. It sits upright and remembers. One breath, then the line. I wanted the room to carry home. We do not fund adult image building from a child's future, I said. Not in my house, not in this hall, not in this family. Lacey's eyes closed, then opened. She gave me a single nod, relief and worry braided together. I kept my hands open on the lectern. Real justice carries a little grief. It says, we can do better, starting now. I turned to protect the people simply doing their jobs. Everyone working tonight has fulfilled exactly what was booked, I added. Casey, thank you for keeping us on schedule. Then to the room, please enjoy your dinner. I'm done. I stepped 1 pace back. The servers flowed again, plates drifting in like quiet moons, and the lane behind me resumed without clipping my chair. Someone had found a rubber stopper for the hinge. I folded the single page and slid it back into my clutch, resting my palm on the clasp, the way you press a stamped letter to let it go. Across the tables, Joran stared. I didn't meet his eyes. I found Lacey instead, mother to daughter. She checked the stroller blanket and gave me a breath of a smile. He's warm. The side screen still read, reservation holder Marjorie, last name, and the cream card sat where I'd left it. No flourish, just a line in daylight. Around us, the room learned how to breathe again. A neighbor leaned close and whispered, "Thank you for saying it plain," then studied the centerpiece as if that were the point. The band leader tipped his head, promising to keep the volume where conversation could live. I rotated the lime wristband inward, smoothed my napkin, and let my shoulders settle 1 notch. When you're 66, you know the difference between winning and drawing a boundary. Tonight called for boundaries. We didn't clap. That felt right. Truth doesn't need applause. It needs space. The baby sighed in his sleep, and 20 adults softened by reflex. I stood 1 step from the mic reachable if the program needed me far enough not to crowd it. Casey hovered with a professional question in his eyes. I shook my head. He lifted the card, read the columns, and set it back exactly. 4 counts and 6 out. The stubborn waters flattened. From the wing, the young manager I'd booked with watched the screen, then the card, then me. She had that careful look people wear when they want both a good event and a clean conscience. She waited until plates were down and conversation had found its level. Then she approached the edge of light with her hand's visible voice, low enough to respect the room. Avery, the manager, stepped forward and asked very gently if she could confirm 3 details for the room. Avery waited at the edge of the light. "May I confirm 3 details for the room?" she asked, voice soft enough not to rattle the glassware. I stepped 1 pace aside, palms open, and nodded. The side screen still showed reservation holder Marjorie, last name. Casey hovered near the mic, ready but not intrusive. I let my breath settle into 4s. This was housekeeping, not a duel. First item, Avery said, reading from a tablet. Reservation record. No drama, just fence posts. Booked 12 weeks ago under Marjorie, last name. Payment received from same. Package ballroom silver with infant accommodation, stroller access, warming station, quiet room. Chairs ticked as people resettled. I kept my eyes on the tablet, not on Joran. 2 contact numbers on file, she added. Both belong to Ms. Last name. She lifted her head. That's the record. Second item, Avery went on. Attached rider. She read the header in 1 line. Child First Rider funds restricted to child-related needs, prohibited for adult promotional or branding expenditures. She didn't hand it around, didn't perform. Facts were enough. Lacey's lashes pressed together, then lifted. The tiniest nod. I said only thank you. She added the boundary that mattered. Scope statement, she said after I nodded. We do not adjudicate family matters. Our role is to honor the booking record and the contracted scope. She thanked the staff. Servers resumed their routes with the grateful pace of people told they're doing fine. The room exhaled. I rested fingertips on my water glass and let the chill remind me what control feels like: cool, transparent, necessary. Casey approached with 2 lanyards, one reading, "Host, one guest." He didn't announce anything, just offered them like coats. Lassie slipped between tables, took the host lanyard, and set it by my plate. I found the edge of the lime green bracelet, eased it off, and laid it face down beside my napkin. The guest lanyard she hung on the spare hook of the mic stand not on a person, not a punishment. A quiet correction, the way you straighten a frame on the wall. I thanked Avery and Casey by name. For professionalism, I said into the mic, keeping my voice low, for keeping tonight about what we came for. No cheers followed. Good. We weren't doing sports. I invited everyone to enjoy dinner and told the servers I'd be out of their lane. An usher angled my chair 3 inches off the swinging door so the hinge wouldn't tap my ribs. Thank you, I said, letting it land. I sat. The lectern still showed my name beside reservation holder, as boring and solid as a property line. The cream card, child vs. adult vanity, rested where the first rows could see if they wished. I didn't look for Joranne. Watching can be a form of feeding. Instead, I watched Lacey straighten a ribbon and hand a napkin to a guest whose water had splashed. The baby cooed. Someone rocked the stroller with a toe. That sound moved through the room like light and rearranged the furniture in my chest. Conversation returned in practical tones. How's the brisket, those tiny cowboy boot favors, Houston weather tonight, while a few glances still drifted toward the lectern. I finished my water and smoothed my napkin. The lime band lay face down. I let it be. Casey thanked the kitchen. Staff flowed past with practiced grace. A server whispered ma'am as he passed neither pity nor praise, just acknowledgement. At my age, I value the plain sentence that doesn't ask to be applauded. Avery stepped into the wings. Lacey brushed my shoulder with her fingers as she passed the exact weight of a memory we both wanted to keep. I let my shoulders drop a half inch. Joranne stood 2 table clusters away, smiling at a cousin's story hands, shaping a point out of air. He did not look toward me, and I did not make him. Some truths don't need eye contact. They have their own bones. The room held. I let it hold. I counted to 4, then to 6. Hunger returned, which felt like a small returning of self. When the silverware settled, I lifted the mic one last time. Funds follow the child, not the noise. I stepped back to the microphone once, only once. Funds follow the child, not the noise. I let the sentence sit like a plumb line. No names, no heat. The lectern still showed my name beside reservation holder. A server paused with a tray of salads, waiting for the room to decide how it wanted to breathe. I counted to 4 and let the quiet carry the meaning farther than volume could. The quiet worked. Postures eased by degrees, the way blinds tilt to catch saner light. Aunt Loretta nodded once. 2 cousins looked down, fingers on their glass rims, as if remembering their own grandmothers. Lacey's shoulders dropped the smallest half-inch. No one cheered. Good. Justice doesn't need symbols. It asks for a steady hand. I did not move closer. From my phone, I read a header and one line only. Thursday, 11:07 p.m., I said. We'll recoup from the family fund. She won't notice. I did not speak the sender's name. I set the phone face down on the lectern, like a cooled iron. Casey lifted a palm to slow the room's exhale. The sound that followed wasn't anger so much as furniture, rearranging thoughts, pushed to new walls. Joranne half laughed the sound a chair makes when it scrapes. That's out of context, he said, bright and fixed. Context is welcome, I answered after dinner with Lassie and me present. I looked at no one else. Tonight celebrates a child, not anyone's brand. Casey let the air settle as if dimming the spots. I turned the evening where it belonged. At each table, I said there's a card for a wish. Write one for our boy, a lesson, a blessing, a joke he can carry. Pens appeared. Men leaned in to consult wives. A teenager asked his granddad how to spell steadfast. Lacey picked up a card, bit her lip, and smiled at the stroller. The baby grunted. I breathed with him. I wrote nothing yet. I left my card blank on the lectern, where the first row could see. Joanne looked toward the sponsor table like a man watching a forecast. No one touched the phone. It didn't need a spotlight. The single line had done its work. "Thank you for loving our grandson," I said. "Please enjoy your dinner." I returned the mic to its cradle the way you return a tool to its hook. Chairs drew closer. The service lane resumed its choreography, quieter now, as if the door understood its job. I took my seat, moved a few inches off the swing by an usher, and unfolded my napkin. The cream card from earlier, child versus. Adult vanity still sat at the lectern, more signpost than weapon. People glanced and returned to their plates. A woman from church leaned near. "Good words," she said. I nodded. Salads arrived. Food is the oldest truce we have. I let bitter and sweet share the same fork. Joanne moved 3 tables over, talking with his hands. No one echoed the earlier joke. Silence properly placed can be louder than a laugh track. Across the table, Cluster Lassie slid a folded sheet from her clutch and laid it by my water glass. "Mom," she whispered, "let's put it in writing tonight." She didn't mean spectacle. She meant bones. I rested my fingers on the paper edge. Before I opened it, I finished what I'd come to do. I took the wish card and wrote in the neat, hand life trained into me, "May you always know what money is for." I set it by the centerpiece boots and breathed. The room breathed back. My wrist felt oddly light without the band. The stroller's canopy made a small tent of shadow. I did not look toward Joanne when I unfolded the paper. Boundaries don't need an audience. The page was the writer my husband and I wrote years ago, 3 lines that fit on a palm. Lacey's thumb rested against the margin. Avery stood by the wall with her tablet down, letting the evening belong to the people who had paid for it and the child it was meant to honor. I traced the top line. The structure remained. I glanced at Lacey. After dinner, I said, keeping it as ordinary as the clatter of forks. She nodded. The band in the foyer began a slow standard attune, slow enough for knees to remember. I slid the page into my clutch. I didn't need to announce anything else. The truth had landed. The rest would be signatures, not speeches. On the lectern, my name stayed where the system had placed it. On the table, my wish card waited with the others. And in the room, the workable quiet returned, the kind you can build a future in if everyone at the table is willing to read the same line twice and sign under it. The band in the foyer tested a second chorus, a warm brass line that drifted in like air through an open porch. Someone near the back murmured, "That's fair," another answered, "It's right." The room found its feet. I watched a grandfather show a boy how to fold his wish card so it would stand like a tiny tent. The boy wrote 2 words, "Be kind," and drew a lopsided star. He set it by the rolls as carefully as if it were china. Across the aisle, a woman took off her heels and sighed, then laughed at herself and tucked the shoes under her chair. Joanne glanced toward the lectern again, then away, then back. He adjusted his cuff and checked a pocket. I let the moment pass me like a train I wasn't boarding. Discipline isn't silence. It's choosing what deserves a ticket. Avery circled once, spoke to a server about coffee, and nodded. "We're steady." I smoothed the edge of my napkin and looked at the wish cards gathering like small flags. They weren't contracts, but they reminded the room that promises start in plain language. Across the aisle, the stroller rocked a finger's width with each draft from the service door. Even the door had learned to move more gently. That, too, is a kind of agreement. Lassie's fingers brushed my clutch and slid a folded page toward me. "Mom," she whispered, half brave, half broken. "Let's put it in writing tonight." I met her eyes, saw the stroller reflected there, and nodded. I stood because mothers stand when it's time to steady a room. We didn't make a speech of it. I laid the page on a spare cocktail round beside the wish cards for the baby. Plain paper, plain words, the rider my late husband and I drafted so money would never confuse love. Lacey placed a pen, then matched her breath to my 4 count. "Thank you," she mouthed. I gave a small smile. From my clutch, I unfolded a 1-page addendum in clear English funds. Follow the child. 2 signatures for any withdrawal. No adult branding. Disputes reviewed within 72 hours with both spouses and 1 neutral witness. I set it beside the child versus adult vanity card from earlier so near tables could see the words match the map. A room decides quickly. I let the paper do its work. Avery. I asked, "Would you witness date and time only?" She stepped forward, tablet tucked against her side. "I'll witness signatures occurred," she said, "not interpret them." Casey let the band lay a ribbon of piano under the clink of glasses. People exhaled. The baby murmured, reminding everyone why we were here. Lacey signed first steady. I signed beneath hers as grandparent, as fund holder. Avery said the time aloud. Good words stay in their lane, describe, not accuse, bind, not bruise. I left 1 space clear and turned the page toward Joran. "This is an acknowledgement," I said. "It only says you understand the limits." He looked at the crowd, not the paper, and gave that little laugh people use instead of courage. "Feels theatrical," he said. "We can talk later." "We will," I answered. "The paper exists now. The child exists now." He tapped the pen twice and set it beside the plate. No one gasped mercy. I nodded to Avery. She initialed the witness line for the 2 signatures and dated the bottom corner. The page didn't sprout fireworks. It lay between the wish cards, sensible as a fence you repaint. There was 1 thread left to tie. I asked Casey to pass a short message while servers refreshed coffee. If any sponsor contribution tonight was intended for adult branding rather than the baby's needs, the manager can provide an optional refund form. No names will be read. Avery lifted a tidy stack of half sheets. Across the room, one of Joran's agency friends took a form with a grateful nod. No drama daylight. At the neighboring table, an older cousin cleared his throat and murmured, "It's cleaner this way." Across from him, a neighbor from church folded her hands and asked if the wish cards would be saved for a scrapbook. Lacey nodded, eyes bright. I heard the low hum of the vents, the light percussion of forks, the chorus every banquet makes when the showmanship drains out and ordinary decency flows back in. It struck me that boundaries stated plainly don't break families. They give people something sturdy to lean on. A few guests drifted by the manager's table, not with theatrics, but with private questions and quick nods. No announcements were needed. The room understood the difference between generosity and advertising. My shoulders finally dropped. The night would still be festive cake photos, a lullaby near the coat room, but it would not be false. I tucked the pages into my clutch with the same care I keep for the baby photo I carry. "I can breathe," Lacey whispered. "Breathing is free," I said, kissing her temple. The photo wall glowed less like a billboard and more like a backdrop, which is all a wall should be when a family is trying again. Joran lingered near the lectern, eyes on my closed clutch, as if it might speak by itself. I let the glance go. Love tells the truth and then lets the truth work. I lifted my water, let the cold glass remind me, heat passes, and turned toward the stroller. Our boy slept through the second act of his own welcome, unbothered by adults relearning the difference between a centerpiece and a center. Avery returned with a sealed witness copy and wrote the time across the flap. We thanked her, and she melted back to the edges where good managers belong once the room knows what it's doing. I did not look for applause. The room owed the child a clear path, not a cheer. Around us, wish cards filled with real blessings, sleep that stretches, steady knees, laughter that returns. Lacey read one under her breath and smiled like she once did at 10. Joran picked up the pen, turned it like a coin, then set it down. Later, he said to no one in particular. Later, I echoed not unkindly. The rider stands whether a man is on time to it or late. Dessert arrived, pecan tartlets, a taste of home. Casey checked his watch and angled toward the stage. Joran lifted a hand. 1 minute for context, he called the cadence of a man chasing the last word. Chairs tightened. I rested my palm on the closed clutch steady. He didn't apologize. He performed, and that made what came next simple. Joran lifted his chin like a man about to sell a timeshare and asked for 1 minute for context. Casey yielded, the mic dessert plates settled, and spoons hovered mid-air. He thanked the room, praised community spirit, and told a short story about budget confusion, as if numbers had simply bumped into each other and bruised. I folded my hands and let my breath keep time. Lacey watched him with her jaw set, the kind of stillness daughters learn when they've grown tired of smoothing things over. He kept his smile pressed on, and the room polite as any southern room tried to meet him halfway. He reframed everything he could reach without owning a thing. The slideshow reorder, he said, was for flow. The seat by the swinging door was for access. The missing video was a technical issue. Each phrase came polished, practiced, ready for a nod. But the laughter he waited for arrived thin, then thinner. The cousins who had chuckled at Bossy earlier only shifted in their chairs. An aunt who had nodded through the toast now stared at her pecan tart as if it might answer a question. I felt the familiar tide in a room when charm stops paying its bills. Avery raised one hand, calm, professional, not dramatic. For clarity, she said our team received a written request to remove one grandmother tribute from the playback order at 5:12 p.m. on Thursday. She kept her voice even. A screenshot of that directive exists in our archive. She did not name the sender. She did not glance at me. She did not scold anyone. She set a fact on the table and stepped back from it. The air shifted the way it shifts when you open a window and the temperature tells the truth. I nodded once, nothing more. The room absorbed the timestamp like a stone entering water ripples moving outward in clean circles. Veronica, my cousin, stood from the second row with the same quiet she brings to funerals and committee meetings. I saw the sentence she read. She said, voice steady. On a group thread last week, she repeated it exactly. We'll recoup from the family fund. She won't notice. She did not say who typed it. She did not point. She simply confirmed that the line existed where more than one person had seen it. Lacey exhaled. It sounded like someone putting down a heavy box. The murmur that had twined through the tables unspooled into silence that felt like respect rather than fear. I took the mic for 10 measured seconds. Context belongs at a table with the three of us tomorrow at noon, I said. Tonight belongs to our grandson. I gestured at the wish cards and the dessert plates, waiting to be enjoyed while they were still warm. The band nudged a soft melody back into the room. Servers resumed their lane with the relief good staff feel when adults decide to behave. I handed the mic to Casey and stepped aside. No victory lap, no sermon. Boundaries had been stated. Facts had been placed. The night did not need my temperature. It needed my steadiness. Joran's smile thinned. He returned the mic to Casey without meeting my eyes. The applause that followed him was light and unfinished, more courtesy than endorsement. I sat and threaded my fingers through Lacey's under the table. Her palm was cool and sure. You okay? I asked. I'm choosing to be, she said, and that was enough for a Saturday night. Around us, small acts recalibrated the room. A sponsor quietly asked Avery for one of the optional refund forms and filled it out with his back to the crowd. A neighbor leaned over to tell me the baby's wish cards would be laminated for a scrapbook. An usher nudged my chair another inch off the service lane without making a show of it. People returned to the reason they dressed up to welcome a child, not to rank adults. Joran stood near the edge of the dance floor, watching the lectern screen that still displayed my name as reservation holder. He straightened his tie, checked his phone, and put it away like it had started to weigh something. I did not watch him long. My attention walked itself back to the stroller, to the pink-creased hand that had worked itself free of a blanket, to a tiny sigh that made the entire hall feel briefly honest. Avery approached our table once more, only to lay a sealed witness copy beside the wish cards. For your records, she said, and moved away. Veronica squeezed my shoulder on her pass back to her seat. She didn't need to add a word. Family, when it's doing its job, recognizes a load-bearing beam and leaves it standing. Joran lifted his glass at a cluster of his friends and tried a fresh grin. It didn't travel far. The room had learned a new refrain and was done humming the old one. Casey's voice floated from the stage, promising coffee in the foyer after a short turn from the band. It was the right cue at the right time, forward, not backward, gentle, not grand. Lacey leaned toward me as the first slow tune began. "Walk with me," she whispered 10 minutes in the corridor. She looked past me toward Joran, who had already started to follow with his eyes. I nodded. Some conversations need a hallway where the air smells like coffee and lemon cleaner, and the only audience is a stack of extra napkins. The corridor by the coffee station was cooler than the ballroom, the air scented with lemon cleaner and espresso. Carts whispered by on soft wheels, an exit sign hummed above the double doors. Lassie touched my sleeve and said, 10 minutes, no audience. Joran came a pace behind Jawset for a speech that wasn't going to happen. I placed both hands on the steel rail of a service cart, breathing in on 4 out on 6. No shouting, I said. No phones, only truth. He nodded. From the other side of the wall, the band slipped into a slow tune. Dessert spoons clinked like rain. I looked at my daughter first. Say it once. She glanced at Joran, then at me. You turned my mother into a joke to get a laugh, she said. When it was my turn, I kept it to one sentence. You gambled our grandchild's future for your image. Silence landed cleanly and stayed. I pulled the folded page from my clutch, the addendum we had read in the room, and laid it on the stainless counter beside the coffee carafes. The paper sat there plain. These are the terms I said. Funds follow the child. 2 signatures for withdrawals. No adult branding. A 72-hour review window for disagreements. They do not depend on whether you like me. They exist because a baby is the center of this circle. I set a pen on the page cap off. You may sign now or later. He gave a dry laugh. It's punitive. Lacey crossed her arms to hold herself still. It's protective, she said. He lifted his chin. There are opportunities the sponsor wall grows reach. I kept my voice even. Then explain the 3 card pings on the nights we already named. He stared at the floor tile. Sarcasm in a group chat isn't theft. Sarcasm didn't move my chair to a service lane, I said. Sarcasm didn't remove my tribute. I drew 2 simple doors in the air with a finger. Door A, repair. You sign tonight. You repay the flag charges on a schedule. We choose it together. You attend 2 counseling sessions about finances. Tomorrow at the brunch, you speak for 30 seconds to correct the record. No flattery, no blame. I let it sit a moment. Door B, separation of access. You decline to sign. That is your right. The addendum still governs the fund. Your access freezes at midnight. Purchases require Lacey and my signatures for now. He pushed his tongue into his cheek and looked to Lacey for rescue. She didn't move. This is pressure, he said. You're cornering me. No, I said. This is a hallway, not a corner. And there's a baby down the hall who needs diapers and a college fund, not a photographer with a drone. He rubbed his wedding band. Steam puffed. A cart squeaked past. I waited, breathing steady. I had time. I had 66 years of practice. Lacey slid the pen closer, gentler than I would have. Choose, she said not cruelly. You were asked to lead. Lead now. He placed his fingertips on the paper, then pulled them back as if the page were hot. I won't sign under pressure, he said. I nodded once more to my own spine, then to him. Then door B takes effect at midnight. I wrote the time in the corner, initialed it, and capped the pen with a click. He tried another angle. Are you going to tell everyone I refused? No, I said. I will tell no one anything. I am not in the business of humiliation. I am in the business of stewardship. Lacey's eyes filled, then cleared. She let air out through her nose the way I taught her before CT scans and hard phone calls. What happens next? She asked. We do paperwork, I said, and we keep promises. I turned to Joanne. Here is what I will not do. I will not post a word on social media. I will not call a sponsor. I will not repeat that line from the email again tonight. I will not teach our grandson to disdain his father. His shoulders loosened a fraction. Here is what I will do. I will protect the child's fund. I will keep receipts. I will answer briefly when asked. I will show up for shots, lullabies, and birthdays, whether you like it or not. Boundaries aren't revenge. They're care. A timer chimed in the kitchen and was silenced. The band began a familiar closing number, bass, soft as a heartbeat. Lacey picked up the addendum, folded it into thirds, and slid it toward me like a letter you mail to yourself. Tomorrow, she said. Noon. My table, I said. You, me, and your husband. We write next steps with black ink and a calculator. Joanne stared at the door that led back to the light. He looked smaller than he had an hour ago. We walked back together, not touching. The corridor opened toward the brightness and the last chorus. Laughter rose and fell. At the threshold, Lacey took my hand under the angle of her shawl, a brief clasp, nothing theatrical. Joanne hovered a step behind, waiting for a cue that wasn't coming. Inside the room, people had shifted. It wasn't applause this time. It was how guests made space for me when I passed and how a cousin stood to give me her chair. The wish cards for the baby lay in a neat stack. We reached our table. The addendum and Avery's witness initials from earlier lay beside the dessert spoons. I set my clutch next to them and smoothed the linen, once smoothing a crease no one else saw. Lacey leaned close. Whatever happens tomorrow, thank you for tonight. I kissed her temple. Tomorrow is for building, I said. The band began the last song. We turned toward the room together. As we stepped back into the ballroom, the music softened and the room shifted with it. People who had watched from safe corners now moved closer, and the aisle that had pinned my chair to the service door loosened. Aunt Ruth squeezed my forearm and said nothing, which suited me. Quiet was kinder than speeches. I touched the folder under my hand, the addendum Lassie, and I had signed, and let my shoulders drop the inch I'd held tight. A bowl of wish cards waited by the cake. Nearby, a neighbor pressed a folded napkin into my palm and said brisket's better after it rests. Texans apologized with food talk. I accepted. Someone edged the stroller out of the breeze, and the photo wall crowd found their seats. No announcement explained it. The room simply remembered how to behave around a baby. Casey signaled from the stage, and Avery stepped up with her tablet. Her voice stayed even the way a metronome never hurries. She read one paragraph from the contract. When a documented dispute touches earmarked funds, the venue may freeze or reclassify non-essential items until the parties resolve it. She noted the timestamp of my request and explained what was covered: backdrops, extras, promotional pieces, and what wasn't food staff music. No one corrected her. There was nothing to add. She read in plain English and let the paragraph stand on its own like a fence post that doesn't ask permission. A few guests exhaled. A cousin clicked his ring and stopped. If anyone felt embarrassed, it attached to choices, not to names. That difference leaves room for people to change without first having to disappear. Joanne asked for the microphone. He held it as if it might sting, and for the first time that night he kept it brief. Impact outweighed intent, he said. I apologize to Marjorie and to Lassie. I'm stepping back from event decisions and from any access to family funds. I inclined my head. Forgiveness can be warm without forgetting, and a boundary can make room for better days ahead. The applause that followed was polite and human. Not a verdict, only a change in weather. On the far side, a toddler banged a spoon, a little symbol that made 3 tables smile. The shortest road to dignity is a straight sentence. Intent is the story we tell ourselves. Impact is the story someone else had to live. I took the mic long enough to finish the work. Refund forms remain available for any optics sponsorships, I said, and Avery lifted a slim stack to show they existed. Lacey added steady as a plumb line. The 2 signature rule is in effect tonight. We'll set counseling this week. We didn't debate, we scheduled. Servers set plates, forks chimed. The centerpieces looked like flowers again. I slid the folder an inch closer to my clutch and let the room breathe. Avery and I traded the small nod women give when a simple plan works. Lacey chose a counseling office halfway between their house and mine and sent the invite before dessert cooled. When people are tired, the next right task is mercy. Casey invited 3 people to pull wishes from the bowl. A neighbor read first, "May you always be safe." A cousin chose one with a smile, "May you know where money belongs." An older friend cleared her throat and offered, "May you grow kinder than our mistakes." I raised my glass. To the child and to the adults, learning. Glasses touched, shoulders eased. Somewhere near the back, the baby hiccuped, and a whole table laughed the soft laugh people use when a future is present and noisy and beloved. The third reader, a retired teacher, added, "Keep your word about small things. That's how big things are built." She dabbed her eyes and laughed, and the laugh spread as pressure eased. We were breathing again without performing. I spoke once more, one sentence to define the years ahead. My door stays open for conversation and supper. Our wallet stays closed to vanity. No thunder followed just a good quiet. I handed the addendum to Lassie. She slipped it into her bag like a recipe card you plan to use. The band played the final song. Guests stacked plates. A teenager shook crumbs from a napkin and missed the trash, then chased it down and tried again. Ordinary goodness, I thought. We are already turning back toward it. I thought of my late husband drafting the rider on the back of a grocery list between batteries and cat litter. He would have liked this ending, not dramatic, just accurate. "We don't buy applause," he used to say. "We buy diapers." Boundaries kept kindly our letters to a future we may not live to see. Sunday brought sun on my back porch and the light tap of sparrows on the fence. At 10, Lacey came with the baby and Joran set the car seat on the mat. He stayed on the step and asked counseling at 3. "Yes," Lacey said, and he nodded hands in pockets like a boy who'd finally found his inside voice. I poured coffee into 2 mugs and passed one to my daughter. We read 3 wish cards together, the safety, the money, the kindness, and tucked them under a magnet on the fridge. I kissed my grandson's hair and whispered, "Funds, follow you, little one." The wind chime answered. The porch smelled of cut grass and distant rain. The baby's breath held that warm, milky sweetness only Sunday mornings know. Joran hovered, then crouched to adjust a blanket edge that didn't need adjusting. Small is where change begins. Today I decided to count small. We didn't relitigate the night. There is mercy in letting a boundary do its quiet work while people try again. The door stayed open. The wallet stayed wise, and the family finally remembered what money is for. Tonight taught me something simple, and sturdy love without boundaries becomes permission, but love with boundaries becomes protection. I spoke up not to win, but to keep a child's future clean and a family's dignity intact. If you're facing a similar storm, breathe, state your facts, and let your money follow your values, not the noise. What would open door, not open wallet look like in your home? If this story touched you, drop a 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't, say why I'm listening. And if you want more true, quiet courage like this, please subscribe to the channel.